You were created to be an emotional being. Sometimes our strongest and deepest emotions can function just like smoke from a fire. If we're willing to follow the trail of smoke long enough, we can find out what's on fire deep in our hearts. And once we find where all the smoke's been coming from, we can begin to deal with the issue before it consumes us completely. Just like physical reflexes, your emotional responses were created by God. The question is, will you choose to ignore them, or will you use this smoke from a fire to find out what's really going on below the surface?
I have very little actual training to speak to people. It's not like I took classes in it or any of that stuff. So I don't really know how to do this, but I did hear one time that when you start a talk in front of people, that you're supposed to start in a place where everybody can join in. You know, like everybody in the room gets one thing. And so you can tell Jesus did this. There's this one time you could honestly tell him, you could tell that he didn't have a ton in common with the Pharisees, because there's one particular time where Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and he's probably trying to employ something similar to that principle, and he's trying to figure out what is the common ground that I have with these morons, because he starts off with doesn't nature itself teach you that whatever goes into your body comes back out? You can tell there's not a lot in common with a group of people. You got to start with poop jokes, right? So he starts out with, but I was thinking, man, I want to start out with something really powerful and helpful. But I think a lot of you, okay? So there's this 3rd century thinker, okay? Now, I know when pastors especially say there's this quote from a 3rd century person, you're like, oh, there's one of two things, either, or maybe both. Either he's trying to sound smart or he wants me to take a nap, one of the two. But I'm not trying to sound smart and I don't want you to take a nap, okay? But here's the thing, this is so important because Augustine, however you want to say it, he said this thing about smoke and fire. Now it sounds 3rd century, right? It's super confusing, and Bryce and I read it to him and he's like, huh? I get it, but it's in there, but it's hard to say. So I'm not going to read it to you because it's boring. But he says this essentially, that there are some things in our lives where they're like smoke from a fire. When you experience an emotion thing, right, something emotional, if you want to, you can trace it back like smoke from a fire, and it goes back to something that's really going on in our lives. Now, I think enough of you to know that you're the kind of people who are willing to say, okay, I want to take a little bit of a deeper step here. I don't care to jump through the religious hoops. I don't care to stand up when I'm supposed to stand up or sit down in the right time to do this thing. But we're the kind of people who really honestly want to deal with the junk that's going on in our lives, right? We want to deal with our stuff. But most of the time, that's not the case, to be totally honest with you. To be totally honest, there are lots of gatherings of people today, right, at this very moment, going on across the country, around the world even, where there are a lot of people who they just want to appear to the people around them that they got their poop in a group, right? They just want to make sure that everybody thinks I got my stuff together, right? And that we keep our pretenses up long enough to get back in the car. But we're the kind of people who want to deal with what's going on. We're real and honest about our mess. In fact, if you're here for the first time, you may have some questions about a group of people that acts like this, okay? But I want you to know this, that we're not a group of people that used to be people like you. And we're not a group of people who try to, who just put up or tolerate people like you. And we're not a group of people who try to change or fix people like you. We're just a group of people like you, just like you. We're just trying to figure out a better way to live. And we believe that the better way to live is found in Jesus Christ. And he tells us how to deal with our mess. Now, there are some times in our lives when we experience some of that mess, right? We experience some emotional things that tell us about what's really going on inside. Last week, we talked about anxiety. And anxiety is a weird one, you know. We talked about how we experience anxiety, and it tells us something about what we value, because we worry most about what we value the most. We talked about that last week. If you deal with anxiety, whether it's a little bit, every once in a while, or all the time, you need to go back and watch last week, because it was valuable stuff. Certainly for me, as I work through my own anxiety, my own stressors, and the things that go on in my life, you can do that by going to ourjourney.news. And that's kind of our Sunday morning portal, okay? So you can find everything you need at ourjourney.news. So if you take your phone out right now and go to ourjourney.news, you can follow along. You can see the Bible passages I'll be talking about. You can follow along the notes. You can even take some other notes and send them to yourself. You can watch messages online, you can give, and all that other stuff. So pretty much everything you need to do, including that welcome card you got when you walked in the door, you can fill out a digital version of that at ourjourney.news. So make sure you go to that and walk along with us, because today we're talking about something else that every one of us deals with. Now this is one of those all skates, right? Remember all skate? When you were a kid, I went to the skating rink, okay? It was like in the 80s, you know? And all skates were the ones where they said, hey, you don't have to get coupled, you don't have to skate backwards, you don't have to have your left ear pierced, or you don't have to put anything in and take anything back out. You just got to skate, okay? Everybody gets to skate. This is one of those same kind of things like that. It doesn't matter if you believe in Jesus or not. If you're here and you're kind of like, I'm not sure about this Jesus, this stuff matters because it's true of all of us. And it's really not based whether or not you experience this or understand it. It really isn't about your relationship with Jesus as much as it is about the truth of who we are. Now, at the end, there's going to be kind of a left turn all of a sudden, but the truth is that you can understand and experience and work through all of this stuff, even if you're not quite sure who Jesus is. So, anger is something we all deal with. Now, some of you are like, oh man, that's not going to be something I really dealt with. I'm not really an angry person, you know? And the truth is that we don't necessarily have to be an outwardly angry person to deal with anger in our lives. We all deal with, every single one of us. We get angry, right? We get angry at the kids. Can I get an amen, right? We get angry at the kids. We get angry at our spouse. Don't be pointing fingers. We get angry about politics. We get angry about people on Facebook who get angry about politics, right? We get angry at people on Facebook who get angry at people who are angry about politics. We get that's usually your spouse. Like, shut up, you don't have to win every fight on Facebook. Nobody votes different because of Facebook posts. We get angry at our bosses. We get angry at our coworkers. If you've got employees, you get angry at your employees, right? If you've got coworkers, you get angry at your coworkers. You may not be the kind of person who lashes out and screams and yells. You might be a little more calm and collected, but you still have that emotion of anger, don't you? Every one of us deal with anger at some level in our lives. How we express it is the question. What we do with it, how we dealt it, how we come up with it, how we express it in our life tells us something about our lives. But here's the deal. Every single one of us express anger in some way or another. And anger's it's a crazy thing. That's why Scripture speaks to it at all. The Apostle Paul, I told you earlier, wrote most of the New Testament. He writes about anger and he uses it as an example. And we jump into it in verse 26 of Ephesians chapter 4. Okay? Now, chapters, verses, books, Paul writes this book to this church at Ephesus. It's a city. So that's why we call it Ephesians. Chapter 4 is just a way to get to it. Verse 26 is a way to get to it in the chapter. It just makes it easy to navigate. So none of that stuff is special except for what he says here. He says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. I love that phrase. It sounds like I can't accomplish it, but I love it. It sounds interesting. And then it says, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Some of you are like, dude, I never get any sleep anymore because I'm up all night long because I'm still angry from yesterday. So that sounds like a tall order, doesn't it? I mean, like when he says, don't sin by letting anger control you. And then he goes on to say, don't let the sun go down while you're still angry. Man, that's some really tall order stuff. When you hear that, you're like, man, that's important for us to get. I mean, it just seems like that's asking an awful lot of me. But what we need to understand is angry in and of itself isn't sinful. Being angry isn't sin. Being angry sometimes is important. In fact, there's this other really old guy, 5th century, who said this: it's true that he who is angry without cause sins. But he who is not angry when there is cause sins also. Like, here's the deal. Anger is important. It can be ridiculous. It can be terribly expressed. It can be horribly damaging. Or it can be unbelievably valuable. Understand this. Without anger, there was no civil rights movement. Without anger, there's no freedom. Without anger, there's nobody who goes, you know what? That's not the way it should be. In fact, without a little bit of anger, there was no turning church. Because it was a little bit of anger in Sheila and I and a handful of others, our elders, leaders. There's a little bit of anger going, man, is this the way church is best done? I mean, is it really the best way to do church that we can imagine is that you come in and file into your pew and stand up and sit down and stand up and sit down and just as I am until somebody finally gets enough of it, goes, I'll go forward, I just want to go to lunch, and then you go forward. Is this the best we can come up with? So there's a little bit of frustration and anger at the church for letting things get so off task. But even more than that, there's a little bit of anger and frustration at the church and us that goes, you know what? Like, I don't like the idea that everybody feels like they have to have all their stuff together and smile big, or everybody looks at them funny. Like, I don't like the idea that if you walked into church after having made some really bad choices, that you walk into church and people look down their nose at you. That's terrible. It makes me furiously angry. Without anger, there's no change that ever becomes something. All we wind up is stuck in the mess of yesterday. So anger can not only be a good thing, sometimes it's valuable and vital. The question is, who controls the anger? The question is, what's going on beneath the surface? If anger is the smoke, what's the fire about? Sometimes it's a good fire, right? Sometimes it's a fire that wells up in us and we're like, no, something's got to change, and there is a demand and an urgency, right? But sometimes it tells us about something else. Because anger really tells us something about what's going on in our hearts. When you get angry, and we all get angry, when you get angry, you have a rare and short window of opportunity to see what's really going on in your heart. Because you're experiencing an outpouring of what's going on inside. Your anger tells you something about what's really happening inside. Anger is one of those things that is helpful to us to really understand us. Because if I ask you, what do you love? What do you care about? You go, well, I don't know, I care about this, and I care about this, and I care about this. Well, I love these things, and I love those things. But when you get angry, it becomes really obvious what you care about. Because anger, at the end of the day, is a destructive energy that's released in defense of something that you love. Whatever you love, you get angry about. Let me illustrate it for you. If your kids come up to you and you ask them a question, and they sass back with something that's like 90% cute, 10% sassy, I think it's hilarious. It makes you furious, right? Like, I think it's funny. Like, I'm thinking, that's funny. That kid, he's got such a smart mouth. That's a handful. We do this all the time. Some of you are laughing because you know you have those kids, right? You got those kids, and like, when your kids roll their eyes at you, I'm like, somebody else's kids roll their eyes at them. That's a lot of loud noise. That's probably God going, hey, I saw you when you roll your eyes, okay? But here's the deal, like, when you experience that, when they roll their eyes at you, it doesn't mean a world to me. I'm like, oh, that's funny, because I've seen my kids roll their eyes. Hey, what does it do to you? You're furious with them, right? Roll those eyes, I'll roll them. Like, right? So, it's a party. I remember rolling my eyes. I don't remember much after that. But I remember, but the thing is that we just have this thing like, our anger comes up in defense of what? Something that we love. I care about your kids. I don't love them like I love my kids. Right? And that's important for us to understand. When you get angry, you have a narrow window of opportunity to find out something that you love deeply, that just wells up in you and springs out, right? Now, everybody gets angry different. We don't all get angry the same way. Some of you have like a really short fuse, right? It's like one thing will set you off, boom, and you explode and it's over, right? Some of you are like, quick, angry, over. And you're like, what? We're good, right? Like, well, I just got angry, it's not a big deal. I'm done with it now, we can go back to what we're doing. Right? And then your wife or your husband is going, you what? You screamed and yelled. You did this and this, and I'm hurt, and I'm angry. And now she's angry or he's angry, right? And they have a really long fuse. Those are the ones you have to watch, okay? That's my mom, okay? We're recording this. That's my mom. She has a long fuse, right? But when she gets angry, you better find a vacation spot, right? Because it's on for now, right? My dad, like, same thing, gets angry, real short. I walk out to the garage one time, he's working on, we had a 73 Pinto, it was like an anger machine. Okay, and so he's working on the Pinto. I said hi. It scared him. He ripped up and hit his head. Remember, had that thing that stuck down on the old hood. He hit his head on it, and just as calmly as he could, walks over to the toolbox, gets a ball peen hammer, and bludgeons the front quarter panel. Just starts hammering it away. I'm like, oh boy. 5 minutes later, totally fine, right? Totally fine. Like you might have a long fuse, but it's going to be months before you. I don't know why I told you that story. Okay, so. Anger is it's crazy. It can do all kinds of stuff. I was making a list this week of stuff. The anger is super versatile. It's versatile. It's like a cuss word. There are lots of cuss words that do this, that you can fit them in any way. You can use them in all kinds of contexts. You can do your own homework, okay? But it says this. I was thinking, anger it can be helpful or it could be harmful. It can be righteous or unrighteous. That's totally different, right? It can be passive or aggressive. And get this, it can be passively aggressive. Have you ever experienced passive-aggressive anger? I'm not real good at it, because I like aggressive. But passive-aggressive anger, you can be you sew up so that it's your way of being angry, so that they know that your no words hurt them. It's crazy stuff. Okay, passive-aggressive, it could be active or dormant. It could be pointed outward, or it could be pointed inward. You could get your anger could happen and point at yourself. You can acknowledge your anger, or it can exist without your acknowledging it. Man, it's crazy stuff how this stuff plays out in our lives. Anger tells us something about what's going on inside. And that's why Paul speaks to it. He's like, anger is going to happen in your life, but don't let it control you, because that's where sin creeps in. So we've got to be careful, because when we experience anger, there's just a moment of time where before we overreact, before we react to it, before we express it, there's this little window where we can find out what's really going on. I want you to ask yourself 3 questions when you get angry. The first one is the focus of my anger right or righteous? Am I focused at the right thing? Because you might be getting angry at the kid who said something to you when you're really angry at yourself for not having kind of seen that one coming, right? You could get angry at that coworker because of the way they treated you, but when what you're really angry is the fact that they damaged your ego. So what you're really flaming up about isn't the coworker or the job, it's how your ego feels. And what you really love might be your ego. So the question is, when you get angry, getting the opportunity to ask God, what is it I'm really angry about? Am I really angry that much over my job? Am I really angry that much over the kids? When the kids roll their eyes, you're not just angry at their little attitude. Their little attitude only lasts 5 or 6 seconds, right? But what you're really angry about, or what you're really concerned about in them, is with the attitude I see today, I don't want it to grow when you're 25. Because when you're 25 and you have an attitude like you're entitled, it makes a terrible adult, it makes a terrible kid. But we know you're going to grow out of most of it. The truth is you react because of the disrespect. But the question is the disrespect such a big deal because it's a big deal to you, or it's a big deal for them? So here's the question we have to ask. Is the focus of my anger righteous? Because it keeps us from letting it control us. If we can just simply ask, is what I'm really upset about righteous or right? Because here's the deal. It tells you what you love. You want to know what you love? Make a list of the things that make you angry. Those are the things that you really love. And the deeper you get into that, the more you ask, the more layers you'll peel back and find out that what you love, what you thought you loved, really wasn't the deal. It's beneath that that's really the issue, is the focus of your anger right. The second thing is the expression of your anger. Is the expression of your anger right? It doesn't make sense, right, for you to tell your kid, don't hit your brother, bam, right? Hey, wait a second, I didn't learn that, right? Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't spank your kids. You should spank your kids. That's fine with me. That doesn't bother me a bit. I love growing up, being here in the South now, because when we moved here, I went to Toys R Us, and there was this kid who was copping an attitude with his mom at Toys R Us, back when Toys R Us was open. His mom got tired of it in the line, in public, jerked his little tail up, and spanked him in public. And I was like, this is a wonderful place. This is a fantastic existence. I just stopped for a minute and thought, why doesn't the rest of the world live like that? It's amazing. But the thing is, we can't express our anger in inappropriate ways. Now, you have to define those things, but I want you to say something. I want you to understand something, especially ladies and kids. Listen, if you're in a relationship, ladies, where the person you're in a relationship, whether you're married or dating or just friends, and they express their anger physically, and you get touched, hurt, pushed in any way, that is not okay. It is not okay in any way to express your anger by angrily hitting someone else. That is not all right, and you need to get out of that relationship, point blank. You're not safe, because the truth is, this next part of it is absolutely the truth, and we're going to talk more about it in a second. It's just a foothold that the enemy has on that person you're in a relationship with, and the enemy's foothold is not done. So understand something. You have to ask this question. Is the focus of your anger right? And is the expression of your anger right? The way you're saying is it that you get angry and you lash out with words and go, wait a minute, I'm angry about something that's good, but the way I'm getting angry is not good. And I need to pull back and invite Jesus into this, right? And let him heal the brokenness in me that wants to express this way with inappropriate words or hurting someone else. Is it helpful? Is it righteous? So is the focus of my anger right? Is the expression of my anger right? And then you have to ask yourself this question. It's a great opportunity to ask this one. Is the level of my anger right? Sometimes we'll get an offense in our life, right? And it's like a 2 offense, right? But then the reaction or the expression is like 11, right? Okay, so like when the kids leaves a Lego out, the world's worst parenting nightmare, right? And you never find these things in daytime, right? You find them at night with your bare feet, right? And you step on it. The level of offense is like a 1 or a 2, right? The initial expression is 64, okay? But when you come back down, right, after you want to choke them out, right? Like when you chill out a little bit, and you're screaming and yelling at them over at like an 11 level, and they're like, I'm so sorry I left the toy on the floor, Is the expression of your anger, the level of anger you're experiencing, is it appropriate for the offense? That's something we have to evaluate, because if the offense is like a 2 and the expression is like an 11, we've got to figure out what's this gap about. Either you're not valuing what's going on, or you need to say, hey, maybe why am I getting so angry about something that's not that big of a deal? Maybe because there's been this kind of explosion. And what we understand pretty quick is that anger is risky business. Now, as soon as I wrote this, I thought, man, I feel like I gotta slide in on some socks. Like get those old records. Some of you are old like me, so some of you have no idea what I'm talking about. That's because you're 30. So, but the thing is that there's this part of us that has to understand that anger is scary stuff, right? And if we don't resolve this baggage that's sitting around in our lives, then we get issues that are a 2, and we walk around with all these unkept things, all this unkept baggage, all this mess that's built up in our lives, and we overreact. You ever heard that word? Overreact to the wrong things. I have 3 teenage girls, right? And I'm married to Sheila. My wife has 4 females, and then we have a female dog. If you are low on estrogen, I have buckets of it you can have, okay? It comes out the windows at our house. But what we spend most of our life doing is telling our kids to pick up the stuff in their room, okay? Because things just get out of control. We have one daughter, I'm not going to mention her name, Michaela, that you could walk into her room and be like, Michaela, pick up this mess. It's crazy in here. You haven't made how do you wind up turning the mattress? How does the mattress get off of the bed in the first place? So, or something like that. So we go, hey, you've got to do something about this. And she's like, okay, I'll pick it up. And she's an obedient kid. She'll pick it up. But 3 hours later, I'll go upstairs, and it looks exactly the same. Then I would think, right, that she didn't pick it up at all, but she did. She just put it all back. She picked it up, and the next time she got stuff out of the drawer, she went, that's on the floor. And it just is crazy. We all have that stuff in our life. Every one of us have emotional debris laying around. And if you don't pick up that emotional debris, it gets to build that riskiness, doesn't it? Like that difference between the 2 offense and the 11 reaction. It comes because we've got all this debris moving around. And what we need to understand is the risky business of anger is that it gives the devil a foothold. In fact, it's the next part of the verse. Paul says, don't sin by letting anger control you, and don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. That's a big deal. The devil gets a grasp on our life when we have unresolved issues in our life. When we don't deal with the junk in our life, it builds up. The enemy has an opportunity to get it. Here's the other thing that it reminds me of, is that when the enemy sees you get angry about stuff, he knows that your anger rises up in defense of something that you love. He knows what you love, and it gives him an opportunity to see what's really going on in your life and what really pushes your buttons. And he sees, hey, she'll get out of control when I attack the kids. He'll get out of control when I attack his ego. He'll do this when that happens. He knows that those things are opportunities because the anger rises up in us and it gives the opportunity for the devil to get a foothold. So we have to process some stuff. You and I have to kind of have some really practical ways of keeping our anger under control. Now, what I want to tell you about is something that is kind of, used a lot of big words, okay? So I spent about an hour on the phone last week with a guy who's a psychologist and author named Jay Stringer. And I said, Jay, you got to give me some like really nuts and bolts, regular way of just dealing with anger when it comes up. He's like, hey, listen, here's the deal. God created your body and mine in the same way. We have 2 systems that kind of balance each other out. One's called the sympathetic nervous system, okay? The sympathetic nervous system is the accelerator, okay? He's like, it's you driving down the highway and it's going, hey, that could kill you. If that person kills you, that person could hit a brake and you rear end them. That person behind you's not paying attention. This ditch over here, you could go off in that ditch. It's like having your wife drive with you guys, okay? Like, do you see that car? Do you see that car? Hey, look over there. I love it. Ah! Okay, I'm like, hey, what happened? Oh, there's this car over there. Hit their brakes. I'm like, I know. Because the other side of it is the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's the balance. If the sympathetic nervous system is the accelerator, the parasympathetic nervous system is the brake. It's going, oh, don't worry about it. That guy over there is going to switch lanes. It's okay. If he switches lanes, you just back off. Okay. And then it's that. There's a ditch that could kill you, but there's a guardrail there, so it's okay. They've got that warning thing you run over. It's okay. It's not a big deal. And yeah, the truck's up there, but he can't stop that fast. It'll be okay. It's the other side of it that balances that kind of whole thing out a little bit. What he said was, this is so valuable to me, is that our way of not letting anger control you, God designed it into you. He said, look, your sympathetic nervous system just works. It's always in panic mode. But your parasympathetic nervous system needs nourishment. And if you're not eating right, you're not sleeping right, you're not exercising right, you're not doing those things, and you're not breathing correctly, your parasympathetic nervous system just kind of goes, don't just hit the brake, it'll be okay. And so you're constantly nervous and constantly anxious rather than dealing with it one at a time. So he says here's a really practical, simple way. Called it square breathing. Square breathing is really simple. It's just breathing in for 4 seconds, count 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4 seconds. Breathe out for 4 seconds. And do that for 4 minutes. Now, don't get that confused and hold it for 4 minutes. That will solve your anger problem, to be honest. But the problem is you're going to have other issues. But just process that for just a few minutes. Go, I'm just going to go to the bathroom real quick. You just relax. I'm going to breathe. And you'll realize that what you've done is fueled the parasympathetic nervous system that God designed into you. Because this isn't some new age breathing technology or somewhere. This is the way God designed you. God designed you to fuel that system that goes, hey, everything's going to be okay. Just calm down. We've got solutions for this stuff. We just need to rest, breathe, and trust God. Man, it's crazy how much this stuff will tell you about the way we live. It's like Paul was inspired to do it, right? But you kind of have to trust that because this next verse, man, you think the order was tall from before. Man, look what he says. He says, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander. I'm like, crap, that's hard to get rid of, right? I can't even get rid of harsh words. It's just like, let alone bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. I'm like, man alive, that's a tall order. Then he says, instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God through Christ has forgiven you. Doesn't it seem like he's going, man, don't be controlled by your anger and then get rid of all this stuff? You're like, I can't do that. I don't know about you, but when I see this out of context, when I see it without everything else that's going on in this passage, I'm like, God thinks more of me than I think of me. Because I can't get this done. And I want you to know something. God agrees. You can't get this done. Not by yourself, anyhow. What's cool about it, and I got to be honest with you, I played a little bit of a trick on you. I didn't tell you that this is just an example. This is just an example of what Paul's talking about in what we call the context. The context is just the rest of the discussion. You ever had one thing in your argument with a spouse or with somebody you love taken out of context? You're like, no, that's not what I said. I said that with this. Well, that's the same thing Paul's going on here. Paul says, hey, wait a minute. Put on, this is what he says in verse 24, put on your new nature. See, if you're a follower of Jesus, then you're not the same person you used to be. The person you used to be is a slave to anger, right? The person who used to be is a slave to evil things. The person that you were before you met Christ is a person who didn't have an option but to behave in a way that pulls you away from Jesus. But he says, this is what he said in 2 Corinthians, so another book or another letter he wrote to the church at Corinth. He said, look, if you're in Christ, you're a new creation. The old you has gone away. There's a new one come in. You have a new heart, a new desire. Everything about you is brand new. But he says in here in Ephesians that we don't just get the new person, the old one falls off. We have to choose to peel off the old us and to put on the new us. We have to choose to recognize that we have a new heart. So when he says, don't be controlled by anger, because anger gives a foothold to the devil, and then he tells us not to have bitterness and rage and envy and harsh words and all those things, and you think, man, God thinks more of me than I do of me. Yeah, because the old you had no ability to do that. But God has given you everything you need because he lives in you if you're a follower of Jesus. This is what I told you earlier. I said, man, you could do all this stuff, even if you don't believe in Jesus. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, you can say, hey, I don't want to let anger control me. And anger can tell you something about what you love and what you care about. And even if you don't follow Jesus, you can kind of work through some of those questions, and you can choose to feed your parasympathetic nervous system. But as a follower of Christ, we have an advantage. We don't have to be enslaved to the garbage that was yesterday. We're not defined by our mistakes. We're not defined by our misgivings. We're not defined by our tendencies. We're not defined by the things that we've done that hurt us and the people around us. We're defined by who Jesus is. So it's only really that through God's help and through who he has made you to be that you have power over your anger. You don't have to be who your dad was. You don't have to be who your mom was. You don't have to be what you grew up with. You have the potential, because you are a new creation, to be something totally different. The question is, will you lean into it and ask God to help you reveal what's broken in you and heal those things that are causing you to lean toward your old self? It's really all about this last part, which is really the first part. Put on your new self. Put on the new you. Because that's who God created you to be. Let's pray together. Jesus, we're just thankful that we have an opportunity to care about the things that you care about. And when we hear stuff like that, we think, man, there's no way I can do that. And God, we just want to recognize that that's true. On our own power, we have no ability to correct what's wrong in our lives. But we recognize that you have given us everything we need, that you are enough. So Jesus, we just ask that you your Holy Spirit would give us the boldness that we need to be able to process our brokenness, to be able to think through and understand our tendencies, Lord. We just ask that your Holy Spirit would give us the discernment we need to be able to understand where we can find healing from our terrible expressions of anger. God, we ask that.